In Washington, reports the United States has cut off aid to Egypt seem to be untrue, at least for now. CCTV correspondent Jim Spellman joins us now with that story. And Jim, the administration seems determined to keep this funding going to Egypt, doesn't it?
Mike, you know, the administration has really struggled to find a way to influence the events in Egypt over this last month and a half or so. And there's a real sense here that if they have to cut off sending this aid, they may lose what little influence they have. Despite U.S. congressional sources telling multiple news agencies that American aid to Egypt has been cut off, the State Department insists the aid, or at least most of it, is still flowing.
We have not made a policy decision to suspend our aid to Egypt, period.
But the U.S. has initiated a review of aid as violence in Egypt continues. At stake is the $1.5 billion in military aid and economic assistance Washington provides to Cairo each year.
A decision to cut off aid would be announced, if it were to be announced, after that review has been completed.
Officials won't say what is being considered in the review or give a timeline for its completion. One thing the review will not consider is whether the events that led to the ouster of President Mohamed Morsi were a coup. If the U.S. were to classify it as a coup, U.S. law would force the aid to stop.
Making a decision about whether or not a coup occurred is not in the best interest of the United States. We've been very candid about that.
The Obama administration hopes the threat of aid being cut off is enough to force the current military-installed leadership to change its course.
And we've also made very clear to the Egyptian government that what happens on the ground is going to impact our policy review. And so it's incumbent upon them to move away from violence and towards an inclusive process.
But Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states have pledged $12 billion in aid, potentially reducing the impact of U.S. aid and any influence it buys Washington in Cairo. In July, the U.S. stopped the shipment of 4 F-16 fighters, but otherwise the aid continues to flow to Egypt, Mike.
You know, it's interesting. The Obama administration has been criticized, coup, no coup. Should they send the aid? Should they cut back on the aid? Why is it so important for them to keep this aid going?
It seems like it would be easy for them to just stop the aid, especially with so much violence going on in the last month or so. Foreign policy experts have been telling me there's basically two parts to this. The economic aid goes mostly to NGOs bypassing the government. That's an attempt to improve public opinion of U.S. on the street in Cairo, in Egypt. But the military aid here is really what's essential. The U.S. wants access to military leadership, access to counterintelligence and strategic information, and a voice, even if it's a whispered voice, when Egyptian leaders are making decisions that could impact U.S. interests. Earlier today, a former Obama administration official told me that this aid is essentially paying a bribe for them to listen.
Boy, and it doesn't seem like in some cases they are listening. So is there a chance the Obama administration might at least cut it temporarily?
That would seem to be a sort of a reasonable middle ground, but it may not be that easy to get the aid to start flowing again if that's the decision they make. They would likely have to go back to Congress, and the Obama administration would probably pay a pretty hefty political price if they have to make an argument for sending more money to a place where people are essentially dying on the street nearly every day, or at least every week. There really is a sense here that if they cut off aid, they may make a few people here happy, but they'll lose that last thread of influence they have, and they need that to be in place when the next regime gets into place there in Cairo.
Yeah, they only have that one lever, apparently. All right, Jim Spellman, thanks so much.